Good morning to you all out there. This is Jim Davis from Leave the Silver. If you will forgive everything going on today, we are in a new location. We moved out of the cave since the lighting was really bad. Hopefully, the sound is a little bit better. We are working on testing out different microphones and seeing what will work better. Testing out the different video cameras, making sure which one will work best for us. So we're going to test out here for a while and see if the video quality works a little better out here. And if you'll forgive the shameless self-promotion that we will start working on in the background as well, we'll go ahead and begin. For those of you just tuning in, today's video does not have anything to do with the Wistemere core book that we will be releasing in 2019. So if that is what you came here for, I apologize. Best to move on or stick around and pay attention to more of our thoughts, more of my thoughts on the general subject of role-playing games that I'm going to talk about today. If you want to stick around, great. And if you don't, we will see you next week. As you can probably tell by now, most of you have been able to tell, if not all of you have been able to tell, none of these videos are scripted, rehearsed, or anything. We have no video editing skills whatsoever. We don't go through and go, that's great, let's shoot that 100 times. Basically, we set it up, I talk, eventually somebody else will talk, and we go with it. Later down the road, we may change that format, but for right now, what you see is what you get. And that is the way we are. If you meet us in real life, and we do have plans to eventually go to some of the more localized conventions, Salt Lake, Boise. We are looking at some in Wyoming, things like that. And we'll branch out eventually. We'll go to other locations as well, and some of the actual bigger names too. But if you meet us, we are the same. You're not going to get anything different. Just so you all are used to that kind of a thing. We don't put up a different persona or anything like that. We are regular people, just like the rest of you all. The only difference is a bunch of us got together with this goofy idea and said, "Hey, let's do this." So that is why you see this as it is before you. This video right now, for instance, is being shot in the basement of my house, which is pretty much the headquarters of Lead the Silver. One of the headquarters. There's actually most of it's run out of here and also out of one other location. We do not have an office per se. We don't rent a location or anything like that. Cost-wise, it's just not really that great of an idea. Besides, we have everything we need here. We have an extensive gaming room. My entire downstairs has been converted into a gaming room. We were fortunate enough to do that. So I have an entire downstairs living area that has a custom-built gaming table, and I have posted pictures of that on Facebook. And I'll put them on the webpage if people are interested in seeing that. And we are designing a new one as we speak to go ahead and accommodate. Our recent Saturday game has grown to anywhere from 5 to 7 players on a regular basis. So we have to incorporate a larger table to have a larger table to incorporate that many people. I have miniatures and books and terrain and things like that galore floating all over the place here. I have an extensive library of role-playing books and fiction books and things like that, fantasy, sci-fi, things like that that are available for people to read, take home, do whatever, that kind of thing. And then in the cave that we used to do the video is the computer room where we have the 2 3D printers. We have a couple computer systems for people, things of that sort. And then the crafting area in the back where we have a lot of the 3D terrain that we work on and things like that for our game, as well as just a couple other projects. So quite the extensive layout here, and apparently the lighting, from what I can tell so far, seems to work a lot better. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I am here to talk about another personal view on some of our role-playing thoughts and views and just suspicions and things like that that we like to do every other week. So with that in mind, I will go ahead and begin. Okay, so one of the guys in our group said, you know what will be a great video for us to discuss, and he may be the one doing it, not me. We're still in discussion about it. He was like, we should talk about alignment and how it works in the game and what our views are on it, and more importantly, how that relates to our book. Well, that's a great idea. However, that is a video that would be pertaining to the book, not this. So that's not what we're here to talk about this week. And it is a great idea. a little bit kind of on that though, when we discuss how games are operated and how games are run, when we were in that discussion was how settings operate. Now we are working on obviously one major setting, but when we get together and we run our game and we run our group on Saturday, and that is not the only one. I do actually run occasional groups on at the local one of the local gaming companies, um, on an infrequent basis, and I have been known to do those in the past. And I do run an online group as well once a week for various, anywhere from 3 to 9 players, depending on who shows up. Um, and the other guys have their own 1 or 2 game here and there as well. But we all have our own ideas about setting. That some people prefer sci-fi, some people prefer fantasy over another. But when you get right down to it, and we all get back together, we really do have a lot in common when we like to play, and that's what we're going to talk about today: setting. Because you have a lot of fantastic games out there. You have the Pathfinder series. You have obviously Dungeons and Dragons, the 5th edition, and in the previous editions. You have one of the new games out there, Top Secret. The older version and the most recent version. And I have a copy of that. You have BattleTech. You have all these different role-playing games out there for people to experiment with and experience and see what they like. But I think the important thing for people to look at is find not only a setting that you like, but a style that goes along with it. And really, maybe style and then setting is really kind of the 1, 2, 3 that I would say to go with. And the reason behind that, and the reason that we look at it is, so when we start out, let's say we finished a campaign. Every time we finish a campaign, whether it's a short one or a long one, we take 2 weeks where we do nothing more than get together, play board games, feast, relax, do absolutely nothing relating to role playing, just to kind of get it out of our systems. Then on the 3rd week, we don't even play. We sit down and we discuss what do we want to do for the next game. And the reason behind that, we always talk about it during game sessions. Hey, how much longer do you think we're going to have? How long do you think this is going to be? And sometimes that could be because, hey, we're kind of winding down. We want it to end. Or it could be, hey, the DM saying, let's just let you all know there's a month left, or there's a year left, or there's a day left, kind of a thing. So we always kind of keep that in mind. And somebody at the table says, I am willing to run the next game. What do you all want? And as a group, everybody goes, well, let's kind of toss up some ideas and think about it. Maybe we want this, maybe we want this. And nothing is really hard decided. But at any given time, a lot of us have multiple ideas kind of floating around there that we can do. And some of them are pre-written, some of them we just kind of make up on the fly. It really depends on what people choose. So when we get to that 2 week playing board games and doing whatever, we kind of discuss it and throw ideas out. Excuse me there. Hey, what do you want to run? Are you going to be the next one running it? Okay. So on that 3rd week, we sit down and we say, all right, let's talk about the next game. And what happens is we, as a group, we decide, okay, who's our next GM, our next DM? You. Boom. Okay. What type of game are you going to run for us? And they say, well, it's your game. What would you all like? You all have said you like this idea, you like this idea. Which is it? And so we discuss it as a group and we say, fantasy. Okay, fantasy. Let's talk about fantasy for a minute. And fantasy is a great setting, but it is a very large idea. What type of fantasy? Do you want to have something with a low magic, kind of like a Conan feel, where you have the barbarians going out and magic is just that something that everyone fears and distrusts? Do you want to have the high fantasy setting where magic is commonly used and it's the heroes of epic proportions going out and slaying dragons and finding massive amounts of treasure and things like that? Or do you want something in between? Do you want to be able to allow for the element of sci-fi to come into it? Do you want to allow for time travel? Do you want to allow for any of these sorts of things? What do we want to do? And as a group, we sit down and we say, well, let's look at what rule setting do we want to use. And so we discuss that for a little bit. And more often than not, our group has said we like to do the 5e setting. We like 5th edition. We did run Pathfinder for about 3 or 4 years, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And the library over here will attest to that because it's got, I don't know, close to 200 books that we have. So yeah, we obviously thoroughly enjoyed it. And the 2.0 that's coming out, we've already got everything that's come out to date, and we've browsed through it as well. So it's in our library. So in case somebody goes, I want to try that, we're ready to go. But what if somebody were to say, I have this wild burr that I miss our beloved Gary, and I want to run something in 1st edition. Well, let's see, what can we use for 1st edition? Gosh, if only we had the books over here. We do. So let's run a 1st edition campaign. Okay, well, what was 1st edition like? Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, 3 of us at this table on Saturdays started out playing that, so we have a very fond reminder of that, and it's something that we know how to do. So we're the ones that run those games over more so than anybody else, and we help people. But if that's what the choice is, okay, we want to run something in the 1st edition theme. Okay, great. Well, there is a lot of pre-written adventures out there for us to use, or do we want to use our own? And so that would be the next thing. Okay, so what type of setting do we want to use? Do you guys want to have something that I just throw together for you all? Do you want something that I just pick out of a book and I just run straight through, or do you want kind of a mixture? How do you want this to go? And as a group, again, we decide. And the reason behind this, I think this is a very important thing for a group, is that the DM does not make these decisions because at the end of the day, it is the player's game. It is not the DM's game. He may run it, he may facilitate it, but it is about the players. It's about their experiences. It's about their story. They are the heroes of their own story. Whether or not they survive it is kind of irrelevant. We've had great games where the players have not survived, and they've been epic tales. And you know what? Not all stories have a happy ending. But that is up to the players. If the players feel good about, I don't mind if we die, excellent, let's dive in. If the players say, I really, really would like to see the ending of this, well, you have to kind of give a little to get a little. And you have to say, there has to be that element of danger. Maybe some of your characters might make it, but not all of them. Or you have to say, look, this is not Candyland, where there's always going to be a winner. This is role playing, and role playing is not a game of I win, you lose. It is a story. And so you choose a setting, and this setting, we sit around and we go, okay, so we've chosen 1st edition. Why don't you just choose something out of your imagination? Okay, great. And we have a lot of material that we can choose from. And our material, when we pick and choose, you say, some people will say, I don't have that great of an imagination. It's not about the imagination. It is. I mean, you have to have a good imagination, but you don't have to have a great imagination. You just have to have the idea of knowing where to look for things. There is a wealth of information, books, the internet, friends, coworkers, things like that, people you talk to, movies, things like that you can pull from. And you can go, okay, I'm going to run a 1st edition game. And I recall these 2 adventures that one of my first characters that I ever had who suffered a horrific death, and it was epic, was the kind of based on the Through the Looking Glass series. And I got trampled to death because my mage turned around, my wizard turned around and went, ooh, I'm going to cast a spell on this thing. Oh, 90% magic resistance. Tromp, tromp, tromp. And then it came back for seconds and then thirds, and I didn't survive. But that is something that the writers went, ooh, let's take, I wonder, what can we base this kind of adventure on? They based it on a series of, stories, books, and then, obviously there are movies and things like that. But you don't have to have this perfect, wonderful, I can come up with everything imagination. We do on that sometimes, and sometimes we don't. So, getting back to our first edition, and I am talking about this because we have done this and we do continue to do this. We had a game, 6, 7 months ago where we did this. We ran just a tribute to Gary, Gary Gygax, in case people are going, Gary, who's this Gary guy? We should know, but Gary Gygax. It was, hey, let's run a short, 1 month long, quick campaign kind of a thing, and run everybody through. And it started out as, okay, you all wake up in a dungeon with nothing on you. Well, clothes, the barest, like threadbare clothing kind of a thing, loincloth, torn up clothing, kind of dressed like slaves, in the dark behind bars. Okay, well, what do we see? That's pretty much it. Oh, by the way, if you're human or whatnot and can't see in the dark, you don't see anything. It's completely pitch black. And only those people who had dark vision, infravision, things like that could see. Okay. And some people might already be going, "Ooh, the A4 series had something similar to that." Yeah, well, that's where the idea started from. And these people went, "Okay, well, what do we do? What do we need to do?" Da, da, da. And they role played for about a half an hour before they figured out, oh, by the way, the bars, yeah, the gate wasn't even locked. They just kind of opened it and got out. But they wanted something that was run through the imagination. So took the idea of, let's start out this way. And then the minute that door opened, I had a series of caverns that I had taken from 3 or 4 different books between the Pathfinder series and Dungeons and Dragons second and third edition books, and even my own drawings, and kind of hodgepodge a series of caves together. And then what did they come up with when they ran into things? Well, it didn't matter. What happened was I had the ecology of caves available to me, and as they went through, based on their actions, their reactions, and the time they were going through and doing things, I had them encounter what could happen. If they spent time looking around, trying to find, is there food? Are there things we can break off to use as weapons? Oh, look, we found somebody here with a rusty dagger. I've got it. If you spent an hour in this thing, sometimes things kind of wander through caves and whatnot. And we rolled all this kind of stuff. We went through things. And it was all on the fly. And it was one session in, they got out of the caves and they found themselves in a place they'd never been before. Because, why does it make sense to come out and find yourself 15 feet from the city gates? Why would that be something that's an adventure? You walk outside the city gates and there's an adventure right there. Why hasn't every single adventurer who has ever lived already been inside those caves? You walk outside and it's a desert. Okay, well, we don't have much in the way of clothing and we don't have much in the way of food. How are we going to survive this? And so now the adventure became, how are we going to get across the desert? How are we going to figure out where and what direction we need to go? How are we going to find water? How are we going to find food? How are we going to survive the elements? And so it became a trek where it wasn't so much the danger of creatures, it became the danger of surviving against the elements. And so, a long story short on this, after 4 weeks, we ended the game, and it was like, okay, what did everyone think? And we, at the end of this, we always go, okay, well, let's talk about the things that were good, the things that weren't so good, the things that were great, the things that were horrible, and kind of wrap it all up. And so we have a good idea of what to look for and what to look out for in the next game setting. But that is the type of setting I'm talking about. These are things that we have found that when we start looking at, we go, how do we want to do this? Sci-fi. If you want to run a sci-fi game, do you want to run a game that you have people in spaceships running around in dogfights in space, shooting them up and blowing things up? Do you want to have a sci-fi game where they take the spaceship and they go from planet to planet to planet and they land and they encounter people and they do pretty much Dungeons and Dragons in space? where they land and they go and they encounter and investigate and explore and do all that kind of stuff. Do you want to have a mixture of that? Do you want to do a battle tech kind of a thing where they get into large robots and so they are a member of a mercenary group? So that group goes from location to location to location and gets involved. So you have the role playing aspect of I need to talk with people and investigate or figure out intrigue. And then, oh, by the way, we occasionally get into our big robots and blow things up. These are things that I have found, and all of us have found, work best when we discuss it as a group and say, what do we want to play? And then when we do, you then in turn have to trust the GM or the DM to come up with a frame to throw out there and go, well, this is what you asked for. And I will react to whatever you all do. But here is the framework we're going to begin, and let's go. And that is pretty much how we do the settings when we do our games. It could be a one-shot game. It could be a month-long game. It could be a 3-year-long level 1 to level whatever campaign. But that is how we do our things. And the important thing for any type of game running in any type of setting is the DM or the GM, whatever you want to call yourself, has to know how to read his players. And the players have to know when to tell that person, I'm not sure this setting is working for us. We've had that happen too. And how do you handle when that happens? Well, let's talk about that because we've had that happen, and we've dealt with it well, and we've dealt with it not so well. We've had both sides of that coin. So let's talk about that. All right, when things go poorly, they go poorly quickly. No, I don't know if anybody's ever sat in a game that just kind of slowly meandered its way into mediocrity and abysmal performance. When they go bad quick, in my opinion. And you might have been that other direction. I don't know. I've never sat in a game or run a game where it just was like, well, it started out good and it just kind of slowly got to the point where no, it's usually been like, okay, la 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 la, boom, I don't like it anymore. And that could be the DM's fault. It could be the player's fault. Either way, kind of a thing. But it doesn't matter. What happens is if it's not good, it's not good, and you need to find a way to make it good or know when to call it. And knowing when to call it to me is just simply a matter of okay, are we going to just call this done? Done. Okay, that doesn't need to be a discussion. If everybody says, let's say this is done, that could be as a matter of and the heroes ride off into the sunset at the end. It's a story. Stories end that way. But if you want to go, I want to keep. I like this character. I don't like this setting because we're talking about setting. How do we continue this in this setting to make it good? Well, that's something for the players and the DM to think about. And it's a very simple thing. Press pause. It is a story. Think of it as a movie. Think of it as a video game. Doesn't matter. But press pause in your mind. Boom. Okay. What isn't working? Is it when these people came out of the cave? They did the one day in the cave, and everybody was getting a little bit of frustration with not being able to find this or do that, or okay, well, they needed to get out of that cave because they didn't want to keep spending 2 or 3 days in that cave, I can tell. So they exited and they found the desert, and everyone was like, ooh, something different. Know how to read your audience. They wanted something different. I could tell, and I've played with these guys for these people, excuse me, guys and girls. I've played for these people for a long time, and you can read people that you've played with. But what if you have new players? Sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask. If somebody looks bored, they could be tired. They might be really bored. Ask. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, everything okay? Hey, are you tired? Hey, are you bored? There's nothing wrong with that because if they look at you and go, yeah, I'm bored, don't take offense. It could be them. It could be you. Understand that you might be the problem, not necessarily the solution. But looked around my players. They looked bored. They were kind of getting frustrated. I could tell. Boom, they're in the desert, and it was something new for them. They wandered around the desert for the last parts of the last 3 sessions. They were okay with that. It was something new. It was a challenge. They had things that came out. The fights made better sense. The wow, I'm getting sunburnt. I'm trying to find water. I'm encountering caravans. They enjoyed it, and all as it was for some reason I'm not in a cave. And after the fact, I talked to 2 of the players and said, "Why did you all seem frustrated?" And it wasn't the caves. It was the I'm tired of doing dungeon delves. Okay, why are you tired of doing dungeon delves? We don't do them on a regular basis. And those 2 players told me that they, well, and to give you a little bit of history for our group here, not only do we do this, and we do this and play our games, we are also active and avid video gamers as well. Um, Most of us do not do console games. We are video gamers on the computer. As I mentioned, the Pathfinder video game and things like that. We do a lot of that, World of Warcraft, things like that. These guys said to me, well, I've been playing a lot of this game. I don't remember which ones at the time, but this game and this game and this game and this game. And it's frustrating because of the crawl and the drag and everything like that. It just kind of reminded me of that, and so I got frustrated. So it had nothing to do with the game necessarily. It reminded them of something else they were doing in something entirely different. And so because of that reminder, it drugged them down. Okay. But you read the audience and that happens. The other people at the table, why were you not having fun? Well, because they were dragging me down. Okay. Again, part of the problem, part of the solution, irrelevant. If it's a problem, you fix the problem. And that's how you deal with it. Change the setting. So, you change the setting. We had a game where we were playing first edition. This was about, I don't know, 4 years ago. We were playing a first edition setting. We said, hey, we're going to make this just a one night boom tribute game. We played it for one night. We enjoyed it so much. It went on for another night. We enjoyed it so much. It went on for 6 months. And it didn't stay in first edition. Long story short, we destroyed the world. Don't know how we allowed it to happen, but and a lot of great stuff came out of the game. But the universe reformed, and oh look, we were in third edition. Okay, we'll roll with it. And we were third edition characters running through, and hey, wow, why screw up a universe once when you can do it twice for twice the fun? And we destroyed the universe again somehow. Okay, I'm just gonna scrub my brain for a second because I have some players. I was a player in that game. Some players who really have strong feelings about that game. And if you're watching this video, just scrub your brain as well. It's okay. You know which game I'm talking about, and it was not that horrible. You just have bad memories. It was a fun game. We had a lot of fun memories about it, and so people forget that because of the ending. And they felt like at the end that they really didn't have much control until you realize and you look back that, yeah, everything we did. But the setting kept changing and changing and changing, and that was the whole point, is that the setting kept changing to reflect what we were doing. We went from first edition to third edition to, if I'm not mistaken, fourth edition into a hybrid of Warhammer 40K role-playing. Now, if you can figure out how to do that, have fun. And that's what the game, and then the game ended after that. But that's how the game went. I mean, talk about drastic change, D&D to Warhammer 40K. But that it was a setting change that made sense at the time. Looking back on it, did it make the best sense? Probably not, but it did at the time, and that's okay. That's how a game works. Know how to look and go, let's fix things. And if it doesn't, well, then end it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if a game is going really well, on the other side of that, it's going really well. But don't be afraid to change things up a little bit, even if you think it's going well, because you might think it's going really well. And you might not be reading the audience around you. They might think it's going mostly well. They might want to see a little bit of change. And when you throw out that little element of something different, that might be like, oh, That's great. Let's run with that. And you never realize that, oh, they were craving something that they didn't get. So even though you know it's going well, don't be afraid to just kind of change things up a little bit here and there. Maybe not change from first edition to Warhammer 40K in the matter of, okay, roll a d20. Okay, here's your new character sheet kind of thing. Maybe that's too much of a change to do in the blink of an eye, but um, maybe, hey, your character is now proficient with this, or oh, now, da, 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 oh, you've stepped through a portal and suddenly the world is like this, or hey, I remember a first edition or second edition campaign where there were things called Vegapygmies, and you ran into robots, and they had ray guns and things like that. Talk about a change in setting. Hi, I'm a barbarian who has a big two-handed sword, and all of a sudden I've got a ray gun. That was a change, but it didn't change the story, and that right there is kind of important. It didn't change the story, and if you change the story too much, then the setting can fall apart really quickly. So watch your players, read what they want. Don't be afraid to ask them. Ask them what they want. Ask them if things are going well. We have a history of in between game sessions that we obviously communicate, but through email, we communicate in game. And every week, if there's downtime in the game, the DM will say, okay, there is X amount of downtime. I want to know. And we don't leave this up to chance, because if you give somebody free will, they will run with it for miles. If you say, hey, you guys have downtime, what do you want to do? And the DM knows that you have 2 days of downtime, and these guys go, oh, I want to build a guild hall and a tavern and an inn, and I want to hire 19 people, and I want to take over the world. Ah! You have 48 hours. You can go get a drink. They don't know, so we don't leave it up to chance. We say, hey, you have 4 days of downtime. What do you all think you can accomplish in 4 days? You have this opportunity. You have this much time. Go. Give me 3 things. Give me 2 things, and we kind of limit it, because otherwise, I've had days where emails where I've said, "Hey, everybody, you have 10 days of downtime. Tell me what you want," and I have gotten 4 pages of notes from people saying, "These are the things I want to do in 10 days." There's only so many hours in a day, and I know it's a fantasy world, yes, but I can't walk around in a city my size and get that kind of stuff done in 10 days with free time and not sleep. So you got to limit that kind of stuff. But we talk about it. And part of those things are, hey, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any complaints? Does anybody have any problems? And we ask that periodically, because you want to have people tell you, hey, I'm not feeling this, I'm not feeling that, or hey, I think this is going really well, or hey, I think this is going really well, but. And the but is an awesome thing. And I did say in one of my other videos, remember the word but is that magical hi, negate everything I've just said before that. Somewhat true. The person might tell you, I think everything's going really, really well, but what would be even cooler? How about dinosaurs? We're in the middle of the desert. I think, yeah, okay. Maybe you find a jungle and there are dinosaurs. Does it really make sense to the story? Find a way, or don't. I mean, it's your story. It's their story. Well, it's the collective your story. And we've had some where it made sense, and I've some where I've emailed back and said, you're in the middle of a desert that is X amount of miles wide. The ecology couldn't support dinosaurs. I'm sorry. That just, even in a fantasy setting, you have to have some semblance of reality for it to make sense. And I've said, I'm sorry, you find a patch of jungle that is a mile by a mile, you're not going to have a T-Rex ronding around. He wouldn't be able to survive on what he can find to eat. He's not going to eat trees that magically grow overnight. Well, yeah, but food could magically appear. Okay, now we're just no dinosaurs. Oh, too bad. You know what? Next campaign, I'll run dinosaurs just for you. Really? Yeah, my campaign's in a year. Have fun. And we've done it. Setting is important. Communication is important about that setting. So keep that in mind. We have found it works. It may not work for every group. I've had some groups where I have emailed people and I've gotten the flat line of no communication from people. It happens. And if you've been with your group for a long time, communication works. If you're with a brand new group or you're running a game out of a game store or something like that, communication may not be something you're able to do. You may get emails from people, like you may get their addresses to say, okay, this is when we're meeting or whatnot. But some people may not like to give out that information. So you may say, okay, how about after each session we have 5 minutes to talk about this? And some people, oh, I don't have time, I got to go, or anything like that, or I'm late for classes, or I got to go to work, or whatever. Um, you try what you can, and if if it does work, great. And if it doesn't work, at least you've tried. So that is what we do in order to keep our stuff fresh. We constantly communicate in order to keep our setting and our game going smoothly. And with that in mind, there's one last thing to talk about for setting. Okay, last thing about setting. I was talking to a coworker the other day who told me about a game he was running where they introduced time travel into his D&D 5th edition game. And I can already visualize, I can't actually see, that would be really creepy. I can kind of see people out there in the audience cringing, going, oh no, time travel, it never works. They do that in TV shows all the time, and it's horrible, only if you get it done right. And that is, I firmly believe that. Time travel is a notoriously horrible idea to introduce to certain games if you don't do it properly. And the way he was describing it seemed kind of similar to what like TV shows like Doctor Who do, fixed points in time. So this guy that he was talking about, his DM ran a year-long game, allowing these guys to go back and forth in time. And it was like, okay. And he goes, no, 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 hear me out. He goes, the way it worked was anything that had ever happened, you cannot go back and change. I'm like, well, that's kind of stupid. By definition, things happen. Anything is happening. I pick up an apple, that's happened. He goes, well, he goes, okay. He goes, events. He goes, kind of like, and he brought up Doctor Who, which was funny. He goes, the fixed point in time. He goes, if you go and you find, the start of World War I, that was a moment, an event in history. You can't change that. I'm like, okay. He goes, so let's look at, our 5th edition. He goes, this guy has got his own world that he uses too. He goes, he's got this massive calendar and all these events have gone on. And he goes, so we're not allowed to touch any of these things that have happened in that history. I'm like, so what you're saying is you're adventurers, but you can't make an impact on the world around you. And he was like, I never really thought of it that way. I'm like, okay. And there's nothing wrong with that because adventuring, and that's another video we will talk about sometime, and other people have talked about this. Adventuring does not have to be world altering, mind blowing, consequence shattering. Look at this. I found the sword that will allow me to conquer the universe and make me the king. No, adventuring can be just I went and looted the town or found the cave and got the treasure, and it doesn't have to be the I rescued the princess. Sorry, Mario, she's in another castle kind of a thing. Adventure is what you want it to be, and these guys did this. They went back and forth in time, and sometimes they were pursuing other people who did it. Sometimes it was they would show up at a guy's house, and he was like, "Oh, it's you. I'm not ready. Come back in 10 years." Okay. Okay, hey, you're back in 10 years? Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant 8. Okay, they come back and be like, yeah, okay, so sorry, 10 years was too late. 2 years before that, this creature was the one roaming around the countryside and everything like that. At 10 years, you guys had already killed it. So now I need you guys to go out and get it. So in 2 years, when you show back up, I can tell you it's okay. We've already done that. All right. Confusing to me, but it made sense to them. And that's the important thing. Their setting worked for them. His group was 10 players, and it worked. They had a blast for a year. They started out with 8, they got up to 10, and it kind of, anywhere from 6 to 10 at any given time. but it was normally 8 to 10 players, and sometimes dipped down to 6 depending on work schedules and whatnot. But they always had this full, humongous 2 card tables out, multiple things going on all the time. DM pulling his hair out and going insane because too many people talking at once. They said it was just a blast. Um, but it worked for them. And that was a setting that, to me, I'll tell you right now, I personally would not be comfortable putting time travel into any of my games. I have just a good enough memory to remember my name and where I'm sitting and the people sitting in front of me because they've been here for a couple of years. Aside from that, um, no, I'm not going to remember unless I have it written down. I'm not going to remember timelines and alternate realities. I mean, I will give a person an NPC's name, and 15 minutes later they were like, "Hey, what was the name of that guy again?" I'm like, "I don't know. Did you write it down?" No. Then his name was irrelevant. We'll call him Bob. It's like there's a lot of Bobs running around my towns. Let me tell you. And it's like, wow, but the character was female. Okay, Bobby. I don't know. It's the I just gave you a name because names are great, but it wasn't, and it's like, oh, so if you give me a name and everything that means the name's relevant, no, not necessarily. The name Bob could be relevant. I just don't remember, you know. So now we have to write everything down because you never know. But it's that, what makes sense to you? What setting works best for you and your group? Um, don't be afraid to really mix it up. And when I say mix it up, so these guys took time travel, which really to me is kind of a sci-fi type thing, and they found a way to work it into a fantasy setting using magic. These guys could very easily have said, "Here's a weird technological type portal that you step on and sends you through time," but they used magic. But there's nothing wrong with that. You could have a game where your players find a portal that transports them to the modern world. And here you have a fighter and a wizard and a barbarian trying to figure out, oh, I don't know, isn't there a game where we're in the modernish times and there are orcs still in the world and elves and things? I'm pretty sure there's a role-playing game out there for that. Or a game where you have you go back in time and there people haven't heard of magic, or you can incorporate all different types of ideas this way, or hey, people in space, Spelljammer, anybody? Um, so don't be afraid to mix stuff up with your setting and ask your people if they want that kind of a thing, because really, honestly, at the end of the day, um, I don't know that your characters are going to enjoy coming into your session with their 5th edition characters in hand, put them down on the table, and having you slap a Warhammer 40K character on top and going, "Hi, this is what you look like today," and totally catching them off guard. That might not be the best course of action, or it might. I don't know your players. I do know my players. So with that in mind, again, my name is Jim Davis, Lead the Silver. Thank you very much for listening and watching. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to shoot us an email. Leave us any comments you want, and we will talk to you all next week. Have fun.